Hi, I'm Melisa Idris and you're watching The Brand, the show about advertising, how it works and how it works on us. Now, I have on the show with me this week the CEO of ADA, which stands for Analytics, Data and Advertising, Srinivas Gattamneni. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I really would like to talk a little bit about ADA and how it started, because essentially this was bringing all the go-to-market brands, all the advertising units under one brand, right?
Yeah, so we saw an opportunity to build Malaysia's largest unicorn in this sector, leveraging our data assets, our marketing capabilities, and more importantly, a business mindset. So we were operating under different brands like AdParlor, which was our social media agency, AdReach, Digital Reach, Mobi Reach in different markets across Southeast Asia. So by consolidating all of this under ADA, we became the largest independent digital marketing firm in the region, operating in 9 countries with a slew of different talent pools in marketing and analytics, in data science, etc. So today, we work with a lot of big brands across different sectors, in banks, in telcos, FMCG, retail. And the timing was perfect for us. If you generally look at the market, there's a lot of digital consumer adoption of digital media. You spend a lot to time on Instagram, I'm sure,
on all social media platforms.
Yeah, on Facebook, etc. Right?
As many of us do.
So we spend a disproportionate amount of time on digital media. But however, brands haven't shifted a lot of their spends across yet.
Really?
There is still a disproportionate spend on digital media by consumers, but brands haven't. So for example, if you look at any of our markets, even Malaysia, the top 50 advertisers only spend, say, 20 to 25% of their marketing dollars on digital. Whereas if you look at the next 100 advertisers, it's less than 10%.
Wow.
Whereas you might be spending close to 40, 50% of your time on digital media itself. So our aim is to bridge this gap, go deeper into the clients, push the digital agenda and enable them inside digital, and thereby can we build a very large business out of this.
Okay, so was there a need to kind of make sure that it was all under one brand? I mean, since you were operating under all the different brands at the moment, what was I guess the benefit of having it all together?
Yeah, so it initially gave us a lot of scale, and with scale we were able to invest in engineering, in data science, in platforms that we could then easily replicate that in all markets at one time.
Because you're operating in multiple markets within this region, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really curious to know about this 25% marketing dollars that's spent on digital, which is fascinating. We'll delve into that a little bit deeper. But the idea of ADA is to combine data, combine technology, and combine the creative aspect of advertising. So you're bringing data to advertising, you're a more data-driven approach to advertising. I want to talk a little bit about that. I mean, that is quite different from what advertising was, traditionally known to be. So do you see yourselves as disrupting the traditional model of the ad agency?
Absolutely. So if you look at the way we do generally and help our clients, we start with the data first, and data helps us to paint consumer profiles and consumer pictures. From there, we move into then developing persuasive campaigns from these insights, and those deliver end-of-the-day results for our clients. So let me give you an example. Imagine there are 2 individuals and both of them are looking to buy a car. They have very similar job profiles, very similar incomes, etc. However, their inner behaviors might be very different. One might be more risk seeker, the other may be more risk averse. So a risk seeker might invest more in adventure stuff, might invest in stocks, etc. Whereas a risk averse person might be looking at more maybe safe havens for investment. So if you're trying to sell a Tesla to them, you might show very different ads, right? The risk seeker, you might go for, okay, 0 to 60 in how many seconds, the power to weight ratio, etc. The risk averse person might care more about the safety class, the crash test results.
Okay.
Might care much more about the environmental impacts, etc. So same product, different people on different psychographic behaviors, you will show a very different creative ad. Now, in order for this to come together, you have to fuse data analytics along with media, along with creative to really make it work. And this has to happen in split second. So hence, we always think about breaking silos between media, creative, and data to really bring this to life.
Okay, because the traditional model, there were these silos, right? So that perhaps, you know, it didn't happen as quickly as we would like it. So you'd have kind of gaps in between. So the idea for ADA is to make sure that there are no gaps, that you're talking to each different category and to use data to drive that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the biggest challenges is traditionally a lot of this was done by humans. We live in an extremely complex world, which actually is not fathomable by humans to actually do this. So for example, show split-second different ad depending on different profiles, different lifestyles, etc. It can only be done by machines. So we deploy a lot of automation, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to actually build models that learn themselves in terms of what type of an ad to show to you as a person, depending on what type of profile are you, what are your interests. And a lot of times, as humans, we can't predict it, so we allow the machines to actually predict it.
So does ADA build its own algorithm for that, or does it depend on platform algorithms?
So we actually get a lot of different data sets from our clients a lot of times, from second-party sources, from third-party sources, and we build interesting models and machine learning models which actually do preference discovery. So what type of preferences you might have. You might even not know about it, but we are able to collect different signals depending on your journey across offline world, across online world, what type of blogs you read, what type of maybe offline locations or stores you visit, where you go for travel, what type of travel do you do. And so we collect all these, which we actually stitch all this data together in order to then infer what preference you might have, and quite importantly, what next action you might take so that we can reach you at the right time, at the right place, in the right context.
All right, we're going to come back and talk about how this data is painting a picture of each individual consumer and what that means for the marketing and advertising of a certain brand right here on The Brand, so stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on The Brand. Now, we were just talking about data, right? That's the heart of what you guys do here at ADA. But Srini, where do you get the data from? Where is this data coming from?
So our data comes from very different sources. Some of it comes from telcos. Some of it comes from different types of apps that you might use. Some of it comes from maybe your past purchases. Your interest from cookies, etc., the type of sites you might have visited. So for us, we collect anonymized signals across, and then
anonymized, so you can't identify.
We can't personally identify you as a person. We don't know your name, we don't know your phone number, we don't know exactly where you live.
Right.
But we are able to collect these anonymized signals and stitch them together. So we don't know who the underlying person might be, but we know that this is a person XYZ, probably of this gender, probably of this age group, but that's not important for us. What's important is what type of behaviors are they exhibiting. So for example, you could be 60 years old and be a soccer fan. So we'll treat you still like a 20-year-old. Okay. Because a soccer fan is more important than the age or the demographic.
I understand. So it's the behavior that's more important, and then you tailor the marketing for the behavior, because that's what drives consumer decisions, right? So then talk to me a little bit about something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, that brands haven't quite caught up to this. The fact that we're spending so much time on our devices. We spend a lot of time on social media, using digital as part of our daily lives. And we're leaving this data footprint for companies like ADA to decode and help marketers understand. Why is it you think that there is such a disparity between the lives of consumers on digital versus brands that want to market and advertise through digital?
So absolutely, there's a big disconnect between the two. That's because brands need a lot of help from the agencies that they depend on to enable them in this space. It requires a lot of technological innovation, a lot of adoption of data-driven models. The agency, or the traditional agencies, haven't really caught up with this. They have still largely dependent on traditional means to drive revenues for themselves. And hence, you see this disconnect. But having said that, I think agencies are developing now and are adopting new ways, but they are still quite slow to move. They're large organizations, they're global in nature, they grew through multitude of acquisitions in the past. So they do, because they are so big, they do fail to move very fast at the same speed the consumers are moving across.
Okay. So in your conversations with clients about using data for, to drive marketing decisions, to drive advertising plans, how are you convincing them that this is the way forward, that data-driven decisions will change the way advertising works at every level of the value chain?
I think for us it's very simple. We align ourselves to their business KPIs, not necessarily their marketing KPIs. So a marketing KPI might be, okay, what sort of reach did you get? What sort of engagement did you get? What sort of clicks did you get? What sort of views did you get? That's vanity metrics for us. For us, the right metrics are how much did the revenue grow? How many new users did you acquire? What was the revenue from every new user that acquired, registrations, etc.
Can you track that?
So we spend a huge amount of time trying to track that and attributing every dollar of media spent to a business metric.
Wow.
It's of course easier in the digital world because everything is tracked. So we know that you saw an ad on this particular app, you moved into Facebook, you engaged with the ad there, eventually you went and bought it digitally, so that's easier to attribute. It becomes more tricky and complex when the conversion happens in an offline world.
Offline and an online
so
world.
we do track that with certain clients where their offline database is integrated with the online, so that there is an identity matching somewhere behind it. But however, sometimes we just might do it at a probability level of a segment of people that we might have shown an ad to, and then attribute it to an offline conversion.
Okay, and clients are happy with that kind of measurement, those kinds of metrics?
It still is 10x better than a pure wasteful approach of where you really don't know what your media dollars did.
Right, yeah, I mean, it really is kind of an ROI, right? I guess that, you have to sell it to your clients in that way. I also want to talk a little bit about programmatic advertising. As you mentioned, this kind of automated ad buying that has you need machines to do it for you. It's no longer something that humans are capable of, doing in split-second decisions. My question is, it doesn't really matter about the volume that you can buy. It's about how smart you are in buying it. Can machines, can AI and algorithms do better than humans in terms of buying quality as opposed to quantity?
Yeah, and absolutely. So in ADA we call that value buying as opposed to volume buying. Now, of course, so programmatic really helps with two main things. As you said, it actually drives more efficiency in the whole system. And two, what it enables you to do is it enables you to do a huge amount of agile experimentation, which the traditional means did not allow you to do. So,
experimentation.
So let me give you an example. So we were working with a digital bank, completely new brand that was launched in Indonesia. That by definition, the product owners thought that it's a digital bank, digital brand. It'll resonate much more with youth audience, digital natives.
Okay.
But through automation and automated insights, we actually started figuring out that there was a big uptake from single moms.
Single moms.
And that was, of course, now we can explain that, but machine learned it automatically through experimentation. And that was largely because they don't have enough time to go to a bank to do their banking needs, to a branch office, etc. So they were signing up to these digital banks which are just launched. So that's an insight a human might not have been able to generate on their own.
It makes sense in hindsight, though, right?
so there are lots of these different products that we try, and the machine automatically predicts and actually gets signals and then starts to move media according to the segments that it starts seeing uptake from.
Okay, all right. So, I can see where that, in that respect, machines can, really disrupt the traditional ad agency. But what agencies are known for is the creative part, right? Creative creation. Is there a way where the creative content is data-driven? Is that an area of advertising that can be value added or even disrupted by data?
Absolutely. So Today we use more machines in order to predict what type of a creative somebody should be developing. So we have invested in actually garnering last 10 years of data on different, for example, videos. Videos on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, etc. And then we are able to then cut segments and see, depending on for certain industries, what type of videos drive highest reach and engagement factor. So then they can start to predict what type of a creative or content brief you should give to your creative agency next time round if you want to drive more engagement automatically. So for example, should it be about the latest trending topic for certain, like say, for example, Ed Sheeran is coming to Kuala Lumpur. So should we develop a content piece around that? Or maybe it is an ostrich running down the street. Should it be something about that? So data can tell your creative agency automatically what type of a creative somebody should be developing.
So would it mean that you would be seeing a different type of creative content and I would be seing something different?
Yes.
Because our patterns are different?
Absolutely. And if you remember the automotive example which I told earlier.
Say a risk-averse versus
so
risk-taker.
it's the same product, but a very different messaging depending on what type of behavior it is.
Okay. All right. We'll come back and discuss a little bit more about how data is disrupting the traditional advertising model after this right here on The Brand. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Brand. I have with me Srinivas Gattamneni, the CEO of ADA, which stands for Analytics, Data and Advertising, a combination of all three. But at the heart of it is the data, right? And we talked a little bit about where you get the data from. You know, in this day and age, I mean, granted, we spend half our lives on our digital devices. There is a certain level of distrust, and I'm speaking personally here. There's a certain level of distrust when it comes to, you know, social media platforms like Facebook or Google, and we wonder what they're doing with our data. You know, what is it? Where are they getting data? How am I being tracked? You know, what kind of digital footprint am I leaving? How do you at ADA deal with that? You know, to make sure that the trust is not broken.
Yeah. So don't get me wrong. Use of data is not incorrect. If there was no data, you would be looking at ads which are completely irrelevant for you.
Yeah, and noise, right?
And it'll all be noise, and you will just switch off every medium that you consume. So data is very useful to make sure that we are providing the most contextually relevant ad for you. However, we also think data should be used very cautiously and only upon consent. Now, regulation has come in certain markets at least. For example, in Europe has led the charge with GDPR.
Yes.
So they have come out with a clear black and white rules of how a data can be used. So for example, do you have the right consent? Have you given the consumer the right to erase their data? Have you given them the right to actually modify it? Are you actually being upfront in terms of how you're using and processing it, etc.? Now, unfortunately, not all markets have picked this up yet. But I think the regulation is kicking in, adopting GDPR as a gold standard and deploying it in most of our markets here. For us, we have taken an early view that we have to follow something as close to GDPR as possible.
So you want to have best practices as the benchmark.
Because it's coming anyway. Now, also for us, our parent is Axiata Group. Telcos, for all their evils, are extremely good custodians of data as compared to any other internet giants out there. So telcos have, and even in Axiata Group, we have a chief privacy officer who then dictate policies in terms of how data can be used and are we using it in the safest manner without breaking any trust. So we have taken a lot of, at least good heritage from our parent in terms of how we process data. We make sure that the consent was already there before any data is even released to a brand. We check that we are using it very cautiously without using any personally identifiable information inside it, etc.
Okay, all right. But one area where you have, I guess, you know, I guess, expanded in terms of the way you've used data is to have all these data scientists as part of ADA, right? So you know what to do with the data. You mentioned a little bit earlier that the data is anonymous, so you can't actually, you know, pinpoint demographic data out of it or individual identifying data from it. That is interesting to me as, you know, a shift away from what we think the advertising agency is about, looking for talent in, you know, the creative sector. But now you have data scientists involved.
Course, yeah.
That's for me is fascinating. So I want to talk a little bit about how you have brought this group of people together under ADA and what that means in terms of the future of advertising. You're bringing different types of talent to this industry. You're looking for different types of skills now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I guess for me to answer that question, let me explain in terms of some examples of where we use data and why we need different talent pools to actually solve problems. So we generally look at structural drivers for any industry. So say banking as an example.
Okay.
In case of banking, they are generally very targeted around a niche set of segments for, say, their products. Say it's a loan product, you're trying to give a loan, you want to only reach out to those people who actually need a loan, and two, who actually have a high propensity to get approved for that loan. Otherwise, media is wasted.
Right.
Similarly, for telcos, it's a very high saturated market, so they focus a lot on churn management and people and retention, and look at switchers who switch between brands. For tourism, it's about who is looking to come inbound into Malaysia. So each of these industry disciplines requires use of data according to that industry need. So we generally bring talent pool from brands or areas from consulting practices who understand these industry needs and can apply data to solve those industry problems.
So across industries. So it doesn't matter which industry you're in, as long as you've got the skill that can be applied.
Absolutely. So
the use of data.
Yeah. So a lot of talent pool comes from data science experts, from consulting firms who worked on different industries. For us, of course, from traditional agencies, of course, they do understand the deep issues that clients face. And we also bring in a lot of fresh graduates who then we train them on critical thinking, on data science, on using data as a new language in itself, to actually develop skills around.
Wonderful. You also have, at ADA, have a venture called ADA Acquire. So this is customer acquisition in a data-driven age, which essentially shifts the risk, the burden of risk, right? Tell me more about that.
So what we found is that the traditional agency model serves the agencies more so than the clients from a fee structure.
From a fee structure.
So what happens generally, you want an agency to help you, you call for a pitch, there's a dog and pony show behind that pitch, presentations are made, and then you go back to normal. So we find that in that model, which is generally a fee-based model, there's not enough vested interest from the agencies to client success, because they make their fees irrespective of the client is successful or not. So we wanted to break that and really disrupt the traditional agency model. So we said, if our data and technology is so good, why don't we take the media risk on behalf of our clients and only charge them once we generate a revenue generating client for them, or we create a real business outcome, which is a dollar figure either in revenue or from a profit perspective. So often not, in this practice, we actually take the media risk on behalf of the client, we generate the user and revenue, and then we charge them only on creating that.
But why would you do that? Why would you take on all the risk? I mean, that sounds like it's a risky proposition.
Yeah, but for us, it's fundamentally a mindset issue. If we take risk, we are in the same shoes as the client. We're getting under the skin of the client, and then we are working together in tandem with them. Secondly, we are then push ourselves a lot to do huge amount of experimentation and unlocking new sources of value for our clients. So only when we take media risk do you start really behaving like the client, and that's what we really want as a business.
And how has the response been?
The response been, of course, fantastic, and which client wouldn't want it?
Do you have to convince them that this is, that there's no, I guess, hidden loopholes, or that there's Do you have to convince them to change that mindset?
Yes, because our clients are still structured, have still structured their budgets according to traditional means.
Right.
There's a marketing budget,
Okay.
then there might be a dealer budget, etc. So for them, this is a new model that they have to grapple.
Trying to get used to it, right?
They have to get used to it. They have current agency relationships that they have to potentially break in order to engage in this model. They might have heads for their offline dealerships that they might have to break. So this is a new paradigm that some of them have already adopted. Some of them we are working with them.
What do you think it'll take to kind of to get to that level that this will be the way the industry works when it comes to, do you see other companies providing that same kind of risk shift as well?
In our markets, we are the first ones to have done this. I don't think there is any other agency that has done this. There are some examples of this in US that have done this for certain sectors like telecom companies. So there's a business called Red Ventures that does it in US. But yeah, in our markets, we're the first ones to have it.
Wow. Very good. All right, congratulations on that. And I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. You've been watching The Brand. I'm Melisa Idris, and I'm going to be back with you same time next week. But I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
It was lovely. Thank you.